September 19th, 2014 arrived with sunshine over the Argentinian city of Bariloche, a picturesque mountain town in northern Patagonia, known for its chocolate shops and Swiss-style architecture. For the 40-person crew of BBC's Top Gear, it marked the beginning of what should have been a straightforward two-week filming expedition celebrating the 60th anniversary of the small block V8 engine. Jeremy Clarkson, Richard Hammond and James May had selected their vehicles, a Porsche 928 GT, a Ford Mustang Mach-1 and a Lotus Esprit, all powered by thundering V8 engines. The plan was simple: drive from Bariloche south through Chile and Argentina to Ushuaia, the southernmost city on Earth, filming spectacular scenery and the usual Top Gear banter along the way. The special would air as a Christmas two-parter, the most important episode Top Gear produced each year. Nobody on the production team had any idea that within 2 weeks they would be fleeing for their lives across an international border, abandoning £50 million worth of vehicles with an angry mob howling for blood. The Porsche 928 GT that Clarkson selected had been sitting in a UK garage for years before a researcher contacted its owner in August 2014. Two examples of the rare GT model were for sale in Britain at the time. Only one owner responded to inquiries. The researcher never actually saw the car before purchase. The online advertisement had the number plates pixelated out, standard practice to prevent identity theft. When the Porsche arrived at the shipping depot, nobody paid attention to its registration number. The production team consisted mostly of people in their 20s and 30s, too young to remember the Falklands War of 1982. They were swamped with logistics, arranging car nets, filming permits, hotel bookings, mechanical inspections, crew travel, and the 1,000 other details required to transport a television production across 2 South American countries. The number plate H9A2 FKL meant nothing to them. It had been registered to that specific Porsche since May 1991, assigned by the manufacturer when the car rolled off the production line. Just 7 characters stamped onto metal, completely unremarkable. Nobody could have predicted those 7 characters would nearly get someone killed. The first 3 days of filming proceeded without incident. The crew shot stunning footage of the 3 V8-powered cars roaring through dramatic Patagonian landscapes, past pristine lakes and snow-capped mountains. Hammond's Mustang struggled with poor steering and heavy fuel consumption, breaking down repeatedly in comedic fashion. May's Lotus proved as unreliable as the marque's reputation suggested. Clarkson's Porsche ran smoothly, purring along mountain roads. On the evening of September 22, the third night of shooting, Clarkson was scrolling through Twitter on his phone when he spotted something that made his blood run cold. Auto enthusiast websites have published photos of the cars being used in the shoot. Argentinian Twitter users had noticed the Porsche's number plate and were making an immediate connection. H982 FKL looked suspiciously like a coded reference to the 1982 Falklands War, the 74-day conflict in which British forces expelled an Argentine invasion force from remote islands in the South Atlantic. Nearly 1,000 combatants and 3 islanders had died. Argentina lost decisively, and the national humiliation still festered 3 decades later, taught to every Argentine schoolchild as an open wound inflicted by British imperialism. Clarkson showed the tweets to executive producer Andy Willman with genuine surprise and concern. The production team held an emergency meeting. They had not chosen the car for its registration, but convincing angry Argentinians of that fact would prove impossible. The number plate was legitimate, registered for 23 years, easily verifiable through UK vehicle databases. But coincidences do not calm mobs. The team contacted local authorities in Ushuaia, their final destination and the most sensitive location regarding Falklands issues. Ushuaia was the port from which the battleship General Belgrano had sailed in 1982 before being sunk by a British submarine with the loss of 323 lives. The town still hosted Falklands War veterans who had never recovered from the defeat. Local officials agreed that the H982 FKL plates would be removed before the Top Gear convoy entered Ushuaia. The crew had backup plates ready, including one reading BE111 AND, British slang for idiot, which they planned to use for the finale's car football match. Crisis seemingly averted. Filming continued. What the Top Gear team failed to grasp was that the crisis had only begun. Social media does not respect geographical boundaries. The photos of the Porsche circulated wider each day. Argentine media picked up the story. Nationalist politicians seized the opportunity to denounce British provocation. Falklands veterans groups mobilized. By the time the convoy approached Ushuaia on October 2 weeks into the shoot, the situation had metastasized from online grumbling into organized rage. The producers had changed the Porsche's plates to H1 VAE, a private registration that had been on the car years earlier. It made no difference. The mob was not looking for apologies or explanations. They wanted revenge for perceived humiliation. The Top Gear crew first encountered protesters on the morning of October 2 at a ski resort just outside Ushuaia, where they were filming scenic mountain footage. A group of locals approached, warning that members of the local trucking union were mobilizing and would arrive soon if filming did not cease immediately. The local guides advising the production team urged immediate evacuation. This was not hyperbole or cautious overreaction. The guides understood Argentine nationalism in a way the British crew could not. The convoy retreated to their hotel in Ushuaia. Waiting outside the building was a small but determined group of Falklands War veterans, standing beside a van painted in nationalist slogans. Las Malvinas son Argentinas, the Falklands are Argentine, plastered across the vehicle's side. More protesters arrived. Then the police showed up, which paradoxically made things worse by confirming the seriousness of the threat. The veterans entered the hotel lobby. They were polite but firm. If the BBC continued filming, there would be trouble. Stop now and leave Tierra del Fuego, or face the consequences. The production team attempted negotiation. They explained the number plate was genuine, not fabricated for the trip. They offered to remove it entirely before the planned car football match, the finale they had spent 2 weeks working toward. The Argentine officials were unmoved. Removing the plate now was too late. The insult had been delivered, intentional or not. Word of the British television crew with the Falklands number plate had spread throughout Ushuaia and beyond. Anger was building, not dissipating. The officials delivered an ultimatum. The entire Top Gear production had to leave Tierra del Fuego immediately. Under normal circumstances, evacuating a 40-person crew with vehicles and equipment would require 24 hours of careful logistics. The protesters gave them 3 hours before violence would erupt. It was already evening. The Chilean border crossing would be closed for the night. They were trapped. The decision was made to split the group. Clarkson, Hammond and May were the primary targets, the recognizable faces that embodied the perceived insult. They would be flown out on the first available flight from Ushuaia to Buenos Aires, removing the flashpoints from the volatile situation. The rest of the crew, including female production staff, would be given a police escort to drive to the Chilean border at San Sebastian. 3 police cars would accompany the convoy. It seemed like a reasonable plan crafted by professionals trying to de-escalate a dangerous situation. Nobody anticipated what was waiting in the town of Tolhuin. As darkness fell, the production convoy assembled. Multiple trucks and vans carried equipment, crew and the 3 abandoned presenter cars, the Porsche, Mustang and Lotus. The police escort took the lead. They headed north from Ushuaia toward the Chilean border, a journey of several hours through desolate Patagonian landscape. Along the route, crew members noticed local vehicles pulling alongside the convoy, drivers checking for the Porsche, taking photographs, then speeding away. Word was spreading ahead of them. Someone was coordinating. The convoy approached Tolhuin, a small village roughly halfway to the border. As they entered the town limits, a large truck had been parked across 2 lanes of traffic, creating a roadblock. The convoy slowed. That was when the ambush began. Protesters materialized from the roadside, dozens of them, hurling rocks and eggs at the vehicles. Windows shattered. Crew members screamed. The projectiles came in waves, stones the size of fists smashing into windshields and doors. Someone threw a pickaxe that embedded itself in a vehicle panel. The police escort proved utterly ineffective, unable to disperse the mob or clear the roadblock. The attack lasted approximately 60 seconds that felt like eternity to those inside the vehicles. Then the convoy punched through, drivers flooring accelerators and swerving around the truck blockade, leaving Tolhuin behind in a spray of gravel and broken glass. Several crew members had been injured by flying debris. Blood streaked the interior of one van, where a window had exploded inward. The vehicles themselves were battered, dented, glass missing, paint scraped away. Worse news arrived by radio. Intelligence indicated that a much larger mob had assembled in Rio Grande, the next major town on the route to the border. This crowd reportedly consisted of 300 vehicles full of angry protesters, specifically waiting to intercept the Top Gear convoy. The mob in Tolhuin had been spontaneous rage. The mob in Rio Grande was organized, coordinated, and far more dangerous. Driving through Rio Grande would be suicide. The police escort made a command decision. They ordered the convoy off the main road. The vehicles turned onto rough terrain, heading cross-country to avoid the town entirely. The police cars stayed on the main highway, a decoy to convince the Rio Grande mob that the convoy was still coming their way, while buying the crew precious time to escape. Night had fully descended as the battered convoy navigated unmarked back roads toward the Chilean border. They had abandoned all pretense of legal niceties. The border crossing was officially closed, but staying in Argentina meant risking lives. When they reached the border, the crew found fencing blocking their way. There was no debate or discussion. They cut through the fence and drove illegally into Chile, an international border violation that nobody cared about because they were alive. Chilean authorities, aware of the situation from frantic communications with British and Argentine officials, allowed the unauthorized crossing. The convoy finally stopped on Chilean soil. People climbed out of damaged vehicles, shaking with adrenaline and relief. They had escaped, but at catastrophic cost. 3 extremely valuable classic cars had been abandoned in Argentina. The Christmas special that was supposed to be Top Gear's most important production of the year had been cut short by 3 days of planned filming. And somewhere in London, Clarkson, Hammond and May, who had been flown out of Ushuaia to Buenos Aires hours earlier, were only just learning the full horror of what their crew had endured. Jeremy Clarkson would later write that the Argentina incident was the most terrifying experience of his career, surpassing his time in Iraq and Afghanistan. He described hiding under a bed in the Ushuaia hotel with a mob howling for his blood outside. The psychological impact on the crew who endured the Tolhuin attack was profound. Some required medical treatment for injuries. All suffered trauma from the violence. Back in Britain, the Argentine ambassador Alicia Castro demanded a formal apology from the BBC, insisting the number plate had been deliberately provocative. The BBC refused, maintaining that the registration was genuine and the offence unintentional. Castro's letter went unanswered. The BBC Trust launched an investigation into whether the production team had engaged in a deliberate provocation or cover-up. On May 28, 2015, the Trust ruled there had been no cover-up, and the number plate had not been a deliberate Falklands reference. No disciplinary action was taken against anyone involved in the production. The fate of the 3 abandoned cars became a diplomatic nightmare that festered for years. The Porsche 928 GT, Ford Mustang Mach-1, and Lotus Esprit sat where the crew had left them by the roadside near Tolhuin. Argentine authorities seized the vehicles and transported them to a police lockup in Rio Grande under 24-hour guard. Falklands veterans wanted to burn the cars publicly as symbolic revenge. The Argentine government prevented that spectacle but refused to return the vehicles to the BBC. Andy Willman, Top Gear's executive producer who later moved to produce the Grand Tour with Clarkson on Amazon, filed multiple formal requests to recover the cars. Argentina rejected every appeal. Releasing the vehicles back to Britain would create the optics of trophies from a victory, potentially inflaming nationalist sentiment all over again. Keeping them indefinitely in a government warehouse also proved politically uncomfortable, a constant reminder of the incident. In 2017, 3 years after the attack, the Argentine government made a decision. In a hush-hush operation attended by federal police, customs officials, gendarmerie, local judicial authorities, members of the foreign ministry, and British embassy envoys, the 3 classic cars were transported to a Rio Grande junkyard. There, industrial machinery shredded and compacted them into nut-sized fragments of metal. The Porsche 928 GT, which had sparked international controversy through no fault of its own, was reduced to scrap. The Mustang and Lotus suffered the same fate. Photographs of the destruction were forbidden. The operation was deliberately kept quiet to prevent it becoming another media circus. News of the car's destruction only leaked to the press in 2019, 2 years after the fact, when Argentine automotive website Autoblog published a reconstruction of what had happened. By then, nothing remained of the vehicles that had nearly cost lives, except memories and YouTube footage of the attack. The Argentina incident exposed uncomfortable truths about Top Gear's brand of provocation as entertainment. The show had built its massive global following, partly through deliberately courting controversy, making jokes at the expense of national stereotypes, pushing boundaries of taste and political correctness. Previous trips to America's Deep South had seen the crew paint provocative slogans on cars to bait locals. Episodes filmed in foreign countries routinely included jokes about national characteristics that walked the line between affectionate teasing and offensive stereotyping. The formula had worked for years, generating publicity and viewer outrage in roughly equal measure. Argentina proved the formula had limits. Whether or not the H982 FKL number plate was coincidental, as the BBC maintained, the fact that many people found it plausible that Top Gear would deliberately reference the Falklands War as a joke revealed how the show was perceived. They had cultivated a reputation as provocateurs willing to go anywhere for a laugh. When that reputation preceded them into a country still nursing deep wounds from military defeat, coincidence became impossible to distinguish from intent. The Patagonia special eventually aired as planned on December 27 and 28, 2014. The BBC decided to include extensive footage of the escape and attack, rather than editing around the controversy. Viewers watched the terrifying sequence in Tolhuin, heard the rocks smashing into vehicles, saw the YouTube video that attackers had filmed and uploaded showing their assault on the convoy. The ending parodied Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, with Clarkson, Hammond and May recreating the film's famous final freeze frame. The closing credits listed every crew member with the prefix Robert Leroy, Butch Cassidy's real name, a dark joke about outlaws on the run. Critics noted the episode had little entertainment value beyond the attack sequence. Without the violence, it would have been a forgettable travelogue through admittedly beautiful scenery. The mob had inadvertently provided the only dramatic tension in 2 hours of television. For Jeremy Clarkson personally, Argentina marked the beginning of the end of his BBC career. The Patagonia special aired in late December 2014. On March 10, 2015, less than 3 months later, Clarkson was suspended from the BBC after physically assaulting Top Gear producer Oyvind Timon in a dispute over the absence of hot food after a day of filming. On March 25, 2015, the BBC announced Clarkson's contract would not be renewed. Hammond and May resigned in solidarity. The entire Top Gear empire that had made the BBC over £50 million annually collapsed. Amazon swooped in, signing the trio to produce the Grand Tour for an estimated £44 million over 3 years. The Argentina incident had not caused Clarkson's departure, but it was the last major controversy of his BBC tenure, a fitting bookend to a career built on provocation that had finally pushed too far too many times.
The broader questions raised by the Argentina incident remain unanswered. What responsibility does entertainment media have when operating in countries with historical grievances? How should production companies assess risk when their stars' reputations precede them? At what point does courting controversy cross from edgy humor into dangerous recklessness that endangers crew members? The 40 people who fled through Tolhuin under a hail of rocks would probably argue that line was crossed when someone decided to take 3 British cars into the most nationalistic region of Argentina without thoroughly checking every detail, including number plates that might be interpreted as provocation. Top Gear's producers would counter that the number plate was a genuine coincidence, that they changed it when the problem was discovered, and that nothing justifies mob violence against a film crew. Both positions can be true simultaneously. The number plate genuinely may have been coincidental, and the production's history of deliberate provocation made that coincidence impossible to sell to an already suspicious population. The crew who were injured in the attack did not deserve what happened to them, regardless of the number plate's origins. And the veterans who lost friends in 1982 defending islands they were taught belonged to Argentina did not deserve to have what they perceived as mockery of their sacrifice filmed in their hometown for British Christmas entertainment. History, nationalism and comedy proved an explosive mixture. 7 characters on a metal plate, H980FKL, triggered an international incident, injured multiple people, cost 3 classic cars, destroyed a 2-week production and nearly killed someone, all because nobody thought to check the number plate before shipping a Porsche to Patagonia. That single oversight, whether innocent mistake or unconscious bias toward provocation, remains the most expensive,